To know, to will, to dare, to keep silent. This is the magician's maxim, known by a variety of different names. The 4 powers of the Sphinx, 4 powers of the Magus, the witch's pyramid, I've also known it as the witch's ladder, the 5 pagan virtues, because Crowley added a 5th element to it. But when it comes to magical strategy, which I started last week with magical strategy concerning how you actually start a magical practice. But this week we're going to go into magical strategy from the point of view of how you actually format your rituals, your spell work and things like that. And the 4 powers of the Sphinx, whatever you want to call it, is very important in this aspect. So let's discuss that. Okay, so this was first mentioned by Eliphas Levi in his writings. He did actually switch the middle part to will, to dare. So it was to know, to dare, to will, to keep silence. But later on, in his last work, The Great Secret, he actually wrote, "To attain such an achievement, it is necessary to know what has to be done, to will what is required, to dare what must be attempted, and to keep silent with discernment." So he did actually, he actually interchanged the two as he went along anyway. Now, just a bit more history. Crowley came along and he also added to go to the end. Now, I'm not entirely sure why. I think the whole basis is actually pretty obvious. So to add that little bit at the end, a bit of overkill for me, but no, it works for some people, so that's okay. Now, these elements are very important when it actually comes to using magic and doing magic. And we'll go through why and each one individually. But just want to clear out the bits and pieces, the interchangeability and things like that. So as we've mentioned, to will and to dare, some people interchange and swap, and that's okay. When it comes to the elements that actually each one represents, then in one format you have to know is associated with air, to will is associated with fire, to dare is associated with water, and to keep silent is associated with earth. And then if we do add the 5th one, to go, is associated with the 5th element, spirit. And the to go part is basically the culmination of the previous 4. They are the 4 pillars that the spirit stands on, and therefore after you've done everything, then you just move forward in your practice, or with your spell work, etc. Just move forward in life, basically. But now, concerning the elements, Levi actually associated to know with air, to will with earth, to dare with fire, and to keep silent with water. So there's also that interchangeability. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but the basis of it does give you some direction and some basis in which to actually proceed. Now, other people have spoken about the 4 powers in different ways. For instance, Paul Husson in Mastering Witchcraft, he mentioned a virulent imagination, a will of fire, rock-hard faith, and a flair for secrecy. So this associates back to it. So to know would be knowledge, to will would be your will, to dare would be courage, and to keep silent would just be, your silence, your secrecy. And so to associate each one with a practice, or how you practice, how you proceed in your spell work, how you proceed in your magical rituals, how you proceed in your magical life in general, can come back to these 4 powers. So if we start with to know, so to know would be to have knowledge of And it's not just knowledge of magic itself, it's also knowledge of what you want to actually do and what you actually want to achieve. If you are doing a spell working or a ritual in order to manifest something, to attain something, you need to know what you want to actually attain, manifest, achieve. Until you know that, you can't move forward. And at the same time, in order to do the ritual, spell work, whatever you're doing, you need to have knowledge in magic itself in order to actually achieve it, to actually do it. So this is the to know part. Then we move on to will. So this pertains to our will itself. Also, if we go back to know and the elements, then to know is associated with air, and air is associated with the mind, with intelligence, with thought and things like that. So we can associate that with the whole knowledge and knowing what you actually want to do. So then we move on to will. And this is your will to actually do it. So once you know what you want to do, then you've got to actually will yourself to do it. And I think this is why to will and to dare can be so easily interchangeable. Because if you're going to will yourself to actually do the working or the ritual, you also need to dare, you need to have the courage to do it. So these do go kind of hand in hand. But your will is your passion, the actual element of fire. It's your drive. It's the actual getting off your ass and actually doing it. Many people will just think about doing something and then they'll do nothing about it. But in magic, once we know what we want to do, we have to get the will and the drive and the passion to actually do it, and also the passion that rises in us, the emotions that it actually generates, also fuel the fire, which then drives the spell working forward. So the will is actually very important to the whole process of spell work in your magical life. If you don't have will to move forward and to learn more, to gain more knowledge, then you're going to come to a standstill and you're going to become stagnant. So that will is the drive that you actually have to continue forward in your magical life, or continue with your spell work, continue with your ritual magic work. It covers all of the bases. These 4 powers do cover everything within magic. So then we move on to dare. This is the courage you need to actually move forward and to implement your will in actually doing the spell work or the ritual. And also, again, your entire magical life. If you don't have the courage to move forward, then you, again, are not going to move forward. You're going to remain in the same position and not move. So you need the courage to actually move forward, and you need the courage to do your spell work. Sometimes, depending on what actual spell or ritual you're doing, it can be quite intimidating, quite fearful. So you have to have the courage to overcome the fears. And a lot of work you actually do within the spiritual aspects of magic, of the magical life, are actually facing your fears and getting to know you and heal yourself. So there's a whole courage aspect that needs to come into play here. So this is the act of to dare to actually do it, to dare to actually move forward, to dare to actually become better. Because to become better is a terrifying thing for a lot of people, and you just need to have the courage, and you just need to use your will and just move forward. And then we come on to the last part, to keep silent. Now, to keep silent is to keep secrecy, and there's a lot of reasons you would do this. There's a whole big thing, and always has been, about magic shouldn't be secret and this and that, but some aspects of magic do need to be secret. Generally, some aspects need to be kept secret because they should not be in the hands of somebody who is not ready for it yet, because if they try and attain whatever that thing is, it could actually be extremely detrimental to them. And some people would use parts of magic that, you know, for things that they shouldn't be using it for. Control, power, dominance over an entire nation. So, you know, there are aspects of magical or occultism itself which do need to remain secret until you actually reach that level where you're actually ready to actually attain it. But generally, you know, for yourself, in your magical life, in your spell work, especially your spell work and your ritual work, if you are doing a spell working, you don't want to tell everybody. You know, you want to actually wait until the results actually come before you actually start telling people what you've done and what you've done it for. And the reason for this is that thoughts are energy. Thoughts are the things that actually create or start the manifestation process. And we can just think something and it will manifest, because the whole process of magic is to know, which is a thought, and then we drive it with will. And you know, in magic, in actual conscious magic, then we need to actually dare to do it. But that kind of gets a bit mashed up if it's unintentional magic. Unintentional magic happens all the time. We'll think something and then we'll let it go and we'll forget about it, and then a week later we find that it's been manifested. And that is the whole process of magic itself. If we go back to sigil work, I mean, that's the basis of sigil work. You have a thought, you create a sigil, you charge it and activate it and launch it, and that launching goes into the unconscious mind, where we then forget about it consciously, and the unconscious mind manifests those results. So, you know, a thought is that process of magic. It begins the actual process of a spell work, and then it drives through, and it manifests. So if you actually go and start telling people that you have done a spell working for this, or you're going to do a spell working for this or that, then their thoughts could actually counteract what you're doing. They may not agree with you. They may think that you are a bit crazy. You know, they might not be magical people themselves. They might not be into witchcraft or magic or the occult or ceremonial magic and everything else. It doesn't mean that they don't do magic or they can't do magic. People do magic every single day of their lives. So by telling people that you're doing a certain working, all these thoughts start hitting at your own working, at your own intent. I mean, and we have it ourselves. You know, we do a spell working and then we might start doubting it. We might start questioning ourselves whether we did it right, whether we should have done it a different way, and it starts nitpicking at the line of the spell from A to B for the result, and therefore it starts pushing it out of place, and it can't get to where it needs to get to. And this is another reason to keep silent. After you've done your sigil work, your spell work, forget about it. Keep silent in that manner. And obviously pertaining to general magical life, some people just will not accept it, some people will not support it, and if you tell all your friends and family that you have started this spiritual life or this magical life, you may get objections, and you may get people who fear for you or don't want you to do it, and they'll try and stop you. You know, you get to a certain point where that doesn't bother you. If people don't like what you do, that's their problem. But in the beginning especially, it can be quite tough. So, you know, don't come onto a magical path and start exclaiming it to everybody and telling everybody, because you could meet resistance, which is not going to be good for you. So, you know, just get the whole thing going. Get into your own practice, your own methods, your own routines, and just keep practicing, and eventually somebody will come along and you'll recognize that they will be sympathetic to what you're doing. You can tell them, that's fine, but don't go and tell everybody else. It's up to you. You know, if you don't mind the rejections and the walls that get put up, I've heard horror stories over the years, absolute horror stories. You know, people being raped and beaten because the neighbours think that they're evil. It's not pretty. I've never had those problems myself, but you know, some people do. So we can't ignore that fact. So to keep silent is actually quite an important aspect of magic itself. And that is the magician's maxim, the four powers of the magus, the four powers of the Sphinx, the witch's pyramid, the witch's ladder, the five pagan virtues. I'm sure it's got 100 other names. It's been adopted by practically every path and tradition around in some form or another. So, you know, as I say, it's quite an important aspect of magic and magical life. So have a look into it further if you need to. And that's it for today. And I hope you have a brilliant week. I'll see you on Friday. Cheers.